I can do many things, but believing in things that insults my own intelligence has never been one of them. Therefore, I would rather lose black friends for telling the truth than to endorse idiotic false beliefs in order to hold on to black friends. Usually people have the right to believe whatever they choose to believe. However, there's a profound exception to this rule when it comes to the oppressed. The oppressed must function based upon what is actually true in order to liberate ourselves. Because if our understandings of our plight and condition are flawed, then all of our liberating remedies and strategies that stems from those misunderstandings will also be flawed. Therefore, I will not remain silent in the face of black ignorance, given that it's black ignorance that hinders our true black liberation. I will always speak out against the many false beliefs that the white oppressors have brainwashed millions of black people to believe. I'm going to tell the truth even if I'm hated for it, blocked for it, unfriended for it, or even disowned for it. I'm going to tell the truth whether it fills the room or clears it out. Because I am called to awaken the sleeping sheep, not to appease the mentally enslaved goats. The mentally enslaved goats that are brainwashed to defend their mental chains. You know, they've got our people so brainwashed and so mentally enslaved that telling the truth and stating facts now literally offends millions. Nonetheless, the time of believing in things that literally insults our own intelligence has now passed. The facts are that a Bible that strongly condones slavery and that was in fact written by history's proven most ungodliest group is inherently totally disqualified from containing the true words of God. And the belief that a Bible that was in fact brutally beaten into submission within the blood-soaked minds of our enslaved ancestors will now set us free is a ridiculous belief. And the belief that we made the N-word ours and that using it now ridiculously empowers us is in fact an idiotic belief. And to believe that black people are being controlled by a silly slave syndrome myth, a person would in fact have to be ignorant, because that myth presents what would in fact be the least effective method used for controlling generations of millions of people. It's simply not how true brainwashing is achieved. Whenever people are ignorant, nonsense always makes perfect sense to them. Our collective condition had nothing to do with a silly slave syndrome myth, nor is it even the Stockholm syndrome. Those who know must teach. African proverb. Here's the truth of our plight and condition of we Africans throughout the diaspora. Unlike at the conclusion of the Jewish Holocaust, when the US government and the United Nations contributed massive financial support to rebuild their lives and restore their culture, there was no moral obligation to do the same for we Africans. Although the African Holocaust lasted hundreds of years longer than the less than 12-year Jewish Holocaust did, and it more greatly decimated the African culture and resulted in millions of more deaths. However, when slavery was abolished, the US, the UK, and many other white nations that brutally exploited Africa felt no moral obligation to restore the lives and culture of we Africans. Those Western nations instead focused on their own self-interest. To protect the white society from massive unified black retribution, especially given the fact that the white society's exploitation of Africans globally and exploitation of Africa's natural resources continues indefinitely, they instead socialized Africans. Socialized is when the oppressors exploit their monopoly over information that are systematically and repetitively fed into the collective minds of the oppressed to manipulate the oppressed to think and behave in ways that are beneficial to their oppressors. The reason why they socialize we Africans is because it's how the white society now protects itself from massive unified black retribution. The socializing of the oppressed is deemed necessary because while invaders, through their weaponry advantages of guns, rifles, and cannons, can invade, pillage, murder, and enslave and oppress a people, they, however, cannot win their loyalty or sustain peace with them indefinitely unless the minds of those people have been socialized to prevent dissent from rising amongst them. Because the oppressed always eventually rebels and engages in acts of massive unified rebellion and retribution against their oppressors. It's an inherent response within the collective human psyche whenever people are oppressed for long durations. The white society prevents this inherent response from happening among the black masses by socializing our minds. There are 4 ways to effectively socialize generations of millions of people: by what they're taught, by what they see, by what they hear, and through repetition. Because the white oppressors controls the education we're taught, they control the media images we see, and control the societal narratives that we repetitively hear, they've secretly exploited these combined factors to socialize the minds of black people, millions of us, without us even realizing it. Wake up and open your eyes. It's no strange coincidence that so many black people now perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies and now reveres Caucasians in spite of the brutally horrific atrocity they inflicted upon us throughout history. This noted mindset amongst the black population that clearly benefits the white society is far too widespread to be coincidental. It's a global occurrence, and it's by deliberate design. Black people have been deliberately socialized. The white society's exploitation of Africans has provided it with an era of which it has flourished most throughout history. To allow this era to end would be directly against the interests of the white society, especially given that the white society's dependence on the great minds of black people that are hiddenly responsible for most inventions that have revolutionized the world, and the white society's dependence on Africa's natural resources are also indefinite. Therefore, the socializing of the collective minds of Africans globally, this allows the white society to continue its exploitation of black people without any black resistance. This is all possible because regardless of how intelligent people are, if it's possible to control the information that they receive, it's entirely possible to control what they'll believe, how they'll think, and how they'll behave. Through the white society's monopoly over information that we receive, they've socialized millions of black people to think and behave in ways that are against our own self-interest and that instead serves and protects the interests of their white society. It's also the true reason why most black people no longer yearns for black liberation. Most instead only wants a comfortable position within the system of white supremacy. It's also the true reason why millions of black people now self-identify by the N-word. They socialize us to self-identify by the N-word because words, when repeated often enough, have power over our subconscious minds. We psychologically become the words that we repeatedly call ourselves. This is why men that call themselves thugs are more likely to engage in a fight than to avoid one. It's why men that repeatedly call themselves dogs are more likely to cheat than to remain faithful. And it's why women that proclaim themselves as being bitches often become stubbornly unreasonable. By socializing black people to repeatedly call ourselves by the N-word, this psychology conditions us to perceive ourselves through a false, inherent, subordinate, and inferior identity that aids the white society in maintaining its social capital and social dominance over black people. White social scientists describe this nefarious practice as merely instilling a value system into the collective subconscious minds of black people that makes us adhere to the authority and the existing infrastructure of the white dominant society. We have been stripped of our knowledge, our true knowledge, our identity of ourselves, our culture, our spiritual system, and have instead been socialized to think in ways that benefits the white society. And because the brainwashing has been ongoing for so long and passed down for many generational lines, millions of us have now normalized our current mindset. But there's nothing normal about it. We have been socialized by the white society. It's truly mental slavery. People that have been socialized rarely, if ever, learns of this fact. This is why most black people don't know that they've been socialized. However, the socializing of the oppressed is actually a very common nefarious historical practice. Throughout history, those empires that were brutally oppressive, fearing eventual retribution from those they brutalized, have always socialized the minds of the oppressed to think in ways that prevents acts of massive retribution. Therefore, the beliefs and perceptions held by the oppressed are never truly their own. They are always falsehoods that are beneficial to the oppressors, that have been shrewdly embedded into the collective minds of the oppressed by their oppressors without the oppressed even realizing it. This nefarious practice of socializing the oppressed was never abandoned. It's what has been done and is continuously being done to black people through the white society's monopoly over information that we systematically receive, which accordingly allows them to control what we believe. Welcome to the real world. It is the real matrix. And don't be fooled. If the oppressors were truly superior, they wouldn't have to tell so many lies to convey it, nor would they have to work so hard and unrelentingly behind the scenes to manipulate us to maintain their advantage over those of us who they claim are inferior. It is time to wake up to our reality. The time of believing in dumb shit is over. One love and peace.